So, jury selection kicks off May 5th. Opening arguments, May 12th. I mean, the Sean Diddy Combs trial is really hurtling forward now.
It really is. And just last week, his defense team tried for a delay, didn't they? A last-minute thing.
Exactly, a real Hail Mary, it seems. And that kind of sets the stage perfectly for what we're diving into today. We're going deep on the strategic chess game happening before the trial even properly starts.
Looking at those defense moves, the evidence rulings, all the stuff shaping the actual battlefield, you know?
Right, and what immediately jumps out is just how high the stakes are. I mean, asking for a delay this close, it usually signals some kind of significant concern, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But then the judge just shuts it down swiftly. That really throws down a marker about the court's readiness and its expectations.
Yeah, it does. And this isn't just about the headlines. We want to get into the tactics and maneuvering. Our main source for this is an on-the-ground report from BBC World Service. They have a YouTube channel, Diddy on Trial.
Oh,
yeah, and it features insights from a senior BBC producer who was actually in the courtroom. First-hand observations.
that's gold, honestly. Because you get past the filters, you know?
Yeah.
It's someone seeing it directly. It lets us focus on what really happened, what was actually said.
Totally. And for you, the learner, listening in, this means we're cutting straight to the important stuff. We'll give you a clear, comprehensive picture of these pretrial decisions, save you hours waiting through news reports, legal jargon.
Yeah, all that noise. We're here to sort of pinpoint the key moments, the potential turning points.
Exactly. I'm your host, ready to explore this with you.
And I'm here to add some context, some analysis, and try to connect the dots between these developments and the bigger legal strategies at play.
Great. So let's start right there with that denied delay. Defense wanted 2 months, right? Said they needed more prep time.
2 months. And Judge Aaron Subramanian's response was, well, blunt, if you're not ready, get ready. Yeah. It's not just a refusal, it's a very clear statement about the timeline. And he apparently felt their initial request was just very broad, like they didn't give specific enough reasons.
Okay, so not enough justification for such a big delay so close to the date.
Pretty much. And here's a key thing. The defense had actually pushed for a speedy trial earlier on.
Oh, that's right, I remember that.
Yeah, and the expert commentator on the BBC report suggested that kind of backfired. It makes it much harder to now turn around and say, whoa, hang on, we need more time.
Right, you can't really argue for speed 1 minute and delay the next.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And the judge didn't stop there, did he? He said something about a fishing expedition.
He did. Not a time for a fishing expedition. And he pointed out, Diddy has 4 attorneys. 4.
The implication being, with that kind of team, you should be ready.
That's the message, loud and clear. Delays aren't happening without really specific, compelling reasons. And that earlier speedy trial push, it's a hurdle now.
Yeah, a self-inflicted one, maybe? Yeah. Now, the BBC producer, Pratiksha Gildeal, she was there, saw Diddy in court, shared some interesting details about how he looked, his demeanor. What stood out to you?
Well, the visuals, first off. Light tan prison attire, slip-on shoes. It immediately grounds you in the reality of his situation.
Definitely.
But then she described him as looking fairly relaxed, if a bit solemn, not falling apart, projecting some composure.
And it mentioned his hair was grayer, beard trimmed, lost weight, little details that paint a picture.
They do. It suggests an awareness of image, even there. And his family was present at one hearing, his mother and a son. He hugged his lawyers, talked with them. Shows that support system.
It's fascinating how those small observations really bring the human element into it, you know, amidst all the legal drama. What was most telling about his demeanor, do you think?
Maybe the fact he listened calmly when the judge denied the delay. Whether that's genuine acceptance or just, keeping it together publicly, it's the image he presented.
Right, and there was a supporter too. Free puff sweatshirt.
Yeah, adds another layer. Shows that public support hasn't completely vanished.
And him mouthing "I love you" to his mother.
Yeah.
It does humanize things a bit. The courtroom was packed, apparently.
Packed. Public, supporters, journalists, and interestingly, lawyers from Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers. Okay, hold that thought, because that connects to the rulings later.
Exactly. And strict security, too. Journalists only allowed paper and pen. Speaks volumes about the sensitivity, the high-profile nature of it all.
Okay, let's get into those key pretrial rulings. This is where the legal strategy gets really interesting. First up, Rule 404B and 413, evidence the prior bad act stuff. Break that down for us.
Okay, so this one's potentially huge. Diddy's team wanted to exclude all evidence of prior bad acts. The judge said no. but only as it relates to someone called Victim 5. Otherwise, the exclusion was granted.
So wait, normally you can't just bring up unrelated past bad stuff to suggest someone's guilty now, right?
Correct. That's the general rule. So the fact the judge is allowing it specifically for Victim 5, it strongly suggests that Victim has alleged prior acts by Diddy that are directly relevant to their specific case, significant enough to be admissible.
The BBC commentator called it a potential bombshell. Why such a strong reaction? What's the quick takeaway here?
Because getting prior bad acts evidence admitted is tough. For a judge to allow it for one victim suggests those alleged prior acts are compelling, directly linked, and probably paint a pattern or context the prosecution thinks is crucial for that victim's case.
And just to be clear, this means other stuff, like maybe the old nightclub shooting allegations, things like that. They aren't coming in as general character evidence.
Unless they're somehow directly linked to Victim 5's specific allegations, then no, based on this ruling. It looks like the prosecution's strategy regarding past acts is really zeroing in on whatever Victim 5 has alleged.
Okay, got it. That clarifies a lot. Next big ruling.
Oh.
Victim 1's memoir drafts. She tried to block the defense from seeing earlier versions.
She did, yeah. Tried to quash the subpoena for them, but the judge denied that, at least in part. Ordered the drafts handed over to the defense by April 25th, 2025.
And why would the defense want those?
It comes down to something called the rule of completeness. If the prosecution uses bits from the final memoir, the defense gets to see the earlier drafts to get the full picture, the full context.
Looking for changes. Inconsistencies.
Exactly, or maybe different motivations expressed earlier. Anything they can use to challenge Victim 1's credibility on the stand. It's about seeing how the story evolved, basically. Did it change in ways that seem suspicious?
Like seeing the editing process, maybe finding notes in the margin that contradict the final version? Metaphorically speaking.
Precisely. They want to argue, potentially, that the final published version isn't the whole story or maybe twist things. It's a standard but important defense tactic.
Okay, then there's Warner Brothers. They have to produce outtakes from their documentary, The Downfall of Diddy.
Yes, but specifically related to two individuals mentioned as Person A, a former chef, and Person B, a former romantic partner.
And this is also the rule of completeness again.
Seems so. Sean Kent, the legal expert on the BBC report, made a great point. What people say on camera for a documentary can be very different from how they act or what they say off camera.
Right, performance versus reality.
Exactly. The defense probably hopes these outtakes show inconsistencies. Maybe someone seems really angry on camera but was laughing and joking just before the take, or maybe there's evidence of coaching. Anything to suggest the documentary portrayal or their potential testimony isn't entirely genuine.
Is trying to peel back the curtain on that curated documentary narrative. Makes sense.
Yep. Looking for cracks in the witness's credibility before they even testify.
And the last big ruling we need to touch on, witness anonymity. What was decided there?
Okay, so Victim 1. They'll testify under their real name.
Okay.
But victims 2, 3, and 4 will be allowed to use pseudonyms, fake names, essentially.
To protect their privacy, presumably.
Exactly. Protect privacy, maybe encourage others to come forward without fearing the public spotlight, that kind of thing. Victim 1, using their real name might suggest confidence, or maybe it's just a strategic choice.
Interestingly, no mention of Victim 5 in that ruling.
No mention in the BBC's reporting of this specific ruling. It could mean their status is already settled under seal, or maybe it's coming in a separate order. We don't know yet.
And the BBC producer brought up the practical challenges. How do you actually keep identities secret in a public trial, especially with, say, video evidence?
It's tricky. You have to redact names, maybe blur faces in videos or photos shown in court. The judge gives strict warnings, don't reveal identities outside court. But if people in the room already know who someone is.
Yeah, preventing leaks informally is almost impossible, right? Even if it's legally prohibited.
Very difficult. The main goal is keeping the jury from knowing the real names, to avoid prejudice based on identity rather than evidence.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Still connected, but outside these immediate rulings. The BBC report talked about the lawsuit involving Shannon Sharpe and Tony Busby. What's the link?
Well, Diddy isn't named in that suit, but the lawyer bringing it, Tony Busby, is the same lawyer who's been very public about representing numerous people with claims against Diddy.
Ah, okay, so it's the lawyer connection.
Right. Busby is now representing a Jane Doe, suing Shannon Sharp for some very serious sexual offenses.
And Sharp came out swinging, denying everything, releasing alleged texts from the Jane Doe, and even named her publicly on Instagram. That seems aggressive.
Extremely aggressive and unusual. Legally, maybe permissible before a court order says otherwise, but judges tend to really frown on publicly naming alleged victims like that. It can look like intimidation.
Wow. And Busby's response.
Busby claims the texts were sent before the alleged assault, says a $10 million settlement was agreed then rejected by Jane Doe, and even claims he has an audio recording of Sharp making threats. It's messy.
Very messy. And Sharp's claiming Busby is targeting him, alleging a pattern against black men, mentioning Jay-Z.
Yeah, that's Sharp's counter-narrative. It's a whole separate legal firefight, but because Busby is involved in the Diddy situation too, it adds to this broader atmosphere of high-stakes legal battles.
Okay, let's circle back to Diddy's actual defense team. His newest lawyer is Brian Steele. Sean Kent, the expert quoted by the BBC, called him the best of the best. What else did Kent say?
He describes Steele as really top tier, polished, meticulous, a hard worker, a quality trial lawyer, the real deal.
So what would Kent think Steele's main concerns were, jumping in this late?
Probably the sheer volume of information they mentioned, a terabyte of data. That's massive. And just getting up to speed before the trial date, especially given how soon it is. Kent speculated Steele probably came on board assuming, or at least hoping, a continuance would be granted.
Which it wasn't.
Which it wasn't. So now Steele and the whole team are under immense pressure. Very tight timeline for a complex, high-profile case.
Yeah, Kent seemed to think asking for that delay so late, especially after wanting a speedy trial before, put them in a tough spot strategically. The judge's denial seems pretty grounded in that history.
Makes sense. The timing in their prior stance worked against them there.
We actually got a listener question about presidential pardons. Someone wondering if that could play a role here. Can you clear that up?
Sure. So the President of the United States can pardon federal crimes. That's in the Constitution. And this is crucial, it's only after a conviction.
After conviction, okay.
And it only applies to federal crimes. It doesn't touch state crimes at all. So could Biden or a future president pardon Diddy if he were convicted of federal charges down the line? Hypothetically, yes. Can it happen before conviction? Absolutely not.
So no preemptive pardon, no get-out-of-jail-free card from the White House before a verdict. Good to know. And what about a hung jury?
If the jury can't agree unanimously, one juror holding out, for instance, it's a mistrial, the prosecution can usually choose to retry the case unless the mistrial happened because of some serious misconduct on their part.
Right. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And finally, the BBC's plans for trial coverage.
They said they'll be providing regular updates, analysis from their correspondents and experts after court sessions wrap up each day, starting May 12th with opening statements, but no live audio feed from inside the courtroom.
Got it. Okay, so let's try to boil this down. Key takeaways. The trial's definitely going ahead soon. Delay denied.
Yep. And that ruling on prior bad acts, huge focus on victim 5, suggests their allegations are central, at least for that part of the prosecution's case.
Then we have the memoir drafts and the documentary outtakes defense gets access, looking for inconsistencies based on the rule of completeness. Big focus on potentially challenging witness credibility.
Right. And the witness anonymity thing, victim 1 uses her name, others use pseudonyms, creates interesting practical issues for the court.
So the real aha moment here for you, the learner, is seeing how these pretrial fights really reveal the battle plans. Prosecution seems laser-focused, especially around victim 5.
While the defense is clearly digging for anything to undermine the prosecution's witnesses and narratives, using that rule of completeness as a key tool.
And understanding this stuff isn't just about celebrity gossip, right? It shows you how the legal system actually works. The strategy, the rules, the importance of evidence and timing. It's like a real-world case study.
Absolutely. It demonstrates these legal principles in action, which is always fascinating.
So here's something to chew on. With this trial moving so fast, what might be lurking in those documentary outtakes or the earlier memoir drafts that we haven't seen? Could there be something in there that completely shifts how we see this case?
And how will the fact that most victims are anonymous actually affect the jury? Or public opinion? Does it make their testimony seem more protected or somehow less concrete because there's no public face attached? Lots of unknowns heading into May 12th.
Definitely. Immense pressure on both sides. We'll be watching closely.